Face the Event. From brand ambassadors and event staffers to magicians and presenters, it's the one and only podcast to introduce the faces in and around the trade show and events industry. And here's our host, Scott Tokar.
Hello and welcome to Face the Event. My name is Scott Tokar. I am your host for this look into the world of brand ambassadors and event staffers. What I mean by this, if you just stumbled onto this podcast and you're wondering, what is a brand ambassador? I'm not talking about the brand ambassadors that get sent free stuff on Instagram. I'm talking about a career where you represent companies at live events, trade shows, bars, restaurants, golf tournaments. This is a career where you actually represent products on a gig by gig status. This is how it works. Companies hire you to scan badges, to explain the features and benefits of a product as a spokesperson, often just to be a crowd gatherer or a product demonstrator. And the way that you find these gigs, the way that you get into this entire world of employment is to listen to this podcast, and you'll hear all the stories about agents and booking direct and all those kind of things. So it is our hope, what we're trying to do is give you the information, the knowledge, the tools so that you can be a successful brand ambassador, trade show staffer, event staffer, trade show magician, juggler, spokesperson. All of these things, that's what we're talking about when we talk about brand ambassadors and event staffers. So the way that this podcast works, again, if this is your first time, welcome aboard. The way that this works is we always start with a question to ask the team of brand ambassadors what they think. Then we have an interview, and then we end with what we call a facepalm, just something fun to make you smile to end the day of the show. So this week's question is, what's the best and worst venue, city, or place that you've ever worked?
My favorite location to work in would be the Las Vegas Convention Center or Sands Convention Center, primarily only because I live in Vegas, so it's the easiest for me to get to. I don't have to fly anywhere. I don't need to worry about hotels. So I can just come home at the end of the night every night and be back at my house. So I would definitely say that Vegas is my favorite place to work.
The worst location, and it's not because it's bad, I hate to say this, but just Las Vegas, because it's so repetitive and it's so like there's no like refuge. You're still in like the lights and the chaos when usually the shows there are pretty big, scale shows. So for that reason alone, I think if I went to Las Vegas on my own time, I'd enjoy it much more. So,
and it's a popular place everyone loves, but I think one of the worst locations for me, because of all the smoke and like the crazy people and all the sketchy stuff, is Vegas.
Las Vegas, Nevada, because I was working in the casino, and when I was off of break, I could go and gamble, which was fun, and the scenery is so beautiful, and the people there are a delight to work with because everyone's there to have a good time, and they're super friendly and nice. And the worst,
oh God, I will work in Vegas. I don't enjoy Vegas.
Best or worst locations I have to work in or at. The worst location was on a hot summer day in Houston, Texas, outside.
And the worst location, once I had to work out in the snow. We got a blizzard, and I was outside doing an activation at the ferry docks, and we were handing out things, trying to have people sign up, and it was snowing, and I almost didn't know how I was going to get home. But it was crazy.
And if anybody knows Texas and Houston, it's not fun, and there were no fans around, and there was no tent over your head. So that was the worst because you're sweating and you're hot.
The worst location I've ever worked in, it's got to be, I have often done it's a big electrical contractors show that happens in Louisville, Kentucky. And a lot of of course, they use up the entire, trade show venue, but they also set up a lot of booths out in the parking lot under tents. So the company I was working for was in a large tent out in the parking lot, and there was torrential rainstorms where we kept going and people actually would come out and visit the booth, but there was actually rivers of water running through the booth while we're doing our business, getting up on the stage, doing our presentations, talking to customers. You actually had a river ran through it, Scott.
So my least favorite place to work is the McCormick place, only because the transportation is a little bit hard there. There's not a ton of parking, or if there is, it's pretty expensive. And so when you if you try to take an Uber or a Lyft, you get caught in a lot of traffic trying to get in. So you pretty much have to allot like an extra half hour to 45 minutes just to get up to the front of the building.
And the best? We touched on the best location. Since our conversation, I'm going to go with Philadelphia with the food nearby. So I had a great experience. A client I work for got me an Airbnb, those really skinny houses nearby. So the whole thing was just a very seamless, easy, fun deal. So I'm going to say that.
The best location I would definitely say is Orlando. I love Orlando, of course.
Las Vegas. Love it or hate it? Do you love heat? Do you love snow? Do you hate rain? Do you hate floods? Do you hate traffic? Everyone has a favorite and everyone has a least favorite place to do their brand ambassadoring. But our favorite brand ambassadors are our Face the Event crew. Let me thank them: Laura Harwood, Sasha Love Higgins, Kristina Fyrk, Channon, Lary Wyatt, and Amy Cosgrove. In today's interview, we have with us a brand ambassador, a trade show hostess, a spokesperson expert in the world of brand ambassadoring and trade show staffing. We're going to talk with Amy Cosgrove and how she started her career as a costumed character and then worked her way into her first gig in Boston, Massachusetts, on to the next gig and building a reputation. She's going to tell us about the optimism of staffing trade shows mid and post-COVID. She's going to tell us how to make $300, $400, $500 per day as an independent contractor. She's going to talk to us about auto shows as a primary industry and being a host or hostess there. She's going to be telling us what we should be doing now, mid-COVID, when there's not a whole lot of work, like updating your profile, pictures, and videos. She's going to talk to us about what is a typical day on an auto show, how media training gives her the ability to speak to the news and to people to be recorded as a representative of a product officially on an auto show trade show floor. And then we're going to talk about the crazy world of Black Hat, the trade show where it's all about hacking. So watch out with your wireless devices and cell phone at Black Hat. Then we're going to talk about ear prompters, live presenting, and the fact that trade shows are a small world, so kind of watch your back. So without me giving away everything that we're going to talk about, here is our interview with Amy Cosgrove. All right, Amy, thank you for joining us here on Face the Event. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. So we've known each other for a very long time, but why don't you let our listeners know, when was your first trade show? When did you first get into this business?
Oh, wow. We're going back in the archives here, Scott. Probably off the top of my head, back when I lived in New England, in Boston, actually. So we're about 2010. So it's been a while, but if I'm putting my finger on it, I believe that was when the whole thing started.
Okay, so you started in 2010. What was your first trade show? What did you do for that?
Actually, it was a very fun trade show, and I think that's probably what where my interest came from. I blindly went into it. It was a video game conference in Boston, and I actually had the opportunity to dress up as one of the characters in this specific game where people could come and get a picture taken with me. And oh my gosh, it was great. There was no shortage of amazing people there, costumes, experiences. So it was a good one. So
that sounds like fun. So what character were you, or do you want to keep that a secret?
It was a specific game. It wasn't anything like bad, but it was like it had a cult following. I am not much of a gamer, but to the folks who are, they were very excited to see it. So, and I will say, I remember that the company I was working for at that show, they spared no expense. I was all decked out and everything. So it was something.
So how did you get that first gig?
I blindly had reached out to a friend who had worked a trade show and just connected with an agent at the time. And, you know, there isn't a lot of work in Boston usually. I mean, they do have a few shows every year. But it just kind of worked out that they needed a blonde. In New England, there's not a tremendous amount of blondes. And I fit the bill for what they were looking for. So even though I had zero experience, it was enough that they were willing to take a chance on me to do it.
So it was an agency, or was it just a friend of a friend kind of thing?
It was a connection through a friend that linked me to an agency.
Gotcha. Yeah. And did it pay well? Is that why you did it, or was it just sound like fun?
Great time. Yeah, I was living in New Hampshire at the time, so you know, I made a commitment to work in Boston. It's a couple hours away, but I believe it was about $300 a day, a 4-day show, and getting a check on the last day of the show. So those are always, you know, pretty lucrative things for sure. Now
that doesn't sound like every trade show that's being worked today. It's rare to get paid on the last day like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That definitely isn't the norm. I will say though, there are agents and agencies that do it. You know, it's becoming more common the past like year or two, I've noticed. But yeah, unfortunately, there are some agencies where you can wait a while before you get paid.
So how did you get the next gig? Now that you've got one gig and you did well in a costume character, was it something like they just started calling you to work other shows or what?
So what happened there is I remember I had a great experience, really enjoyed the people I was working for, and they put in a good word for me. And again, being on the East Coast, the agent that I had worked for decided to have me help out at a few other shows. Boston, Philadelphia comes to mind. And it just kind of started from there. I actually worked with her pretty exclusively in the beginning. And then once I, you know, figured out, you know, more of the industry connections, et cetera, I branched out to other agencies as well.
Gotcha. So you work for more than one agency, even to this day? You work for more than one agency?
Even to this day, yeah. There's actually quite a few. And leading up into this pandemic, I mean, the business was good. I think we were all turning away work. I know from my experience, that's how it was. So yeah, there's a lot of, with you know, the work being strong up until this point, there's a lot of agencies out there who had some great gigs. So
yeah, if you're listening to this interview, you know, a year or two from now, and you're wondering what the heck we're talking about, we're talking obviously about coronavirus and the halt to work here. You know, let me give you some optimism here. I really believe that it's the trade show staffing, crowd gatherers, badge scanners, brand ambassadors that are going to get work back faster than most people in trade shows. And the reason for that is because I think that there's still going to be a hesitance to send C-level executives out to a trade show. So they still have to man that booth, or that's just not even the right word. They need to staff that booth. I don't want to sound like a chauvinist, but they want to staff that booth. And so you know, I think that for everyone that's out there as contract gig work, as a brand ambassador, trade show staffer, model, hostess, whatever you want to call it, I think this is going to be a really good year as soon as we get the trade shows open again.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point. I honestly haven't thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense now that you bring that up. You know, I think we're all here just twiddling our thumbs at this point, wondering what's going to happen, you know, what the trends will be. Sure, some stuff will change for the better, maybe some, you know, not as good, but I think all in all, that people that attend these shows love going to them. We're a big part of that. So I can't see that changing, even with what's been going on this year.
Yeah. Now, you said your very first one was like for $300 a day. Is that right? Still the going rate now, or is it more or less? Or
that, and then on up from that now. Yeah, I would say that's still a good rate, depending on what you're doing. But if you're adding an additional skill set to it, then your rate goes up. As well as, you know, being in the business for, you know, roughly 10 years or so here, It's also, not uncommon now that if I'll work something, but also, the flight, hotel, per diem is included. Because I think if you get a good, reputation with a client and do a great job, it's well worth them having you there than just, picking someone blindly in that specific city. So I can't stress that enough. I think if you do a great job, like, you will have many returns on that. So,
well, especially if you're local to an event.
Absolutely.
The advantage of hiring someone for $300, $400, $500 is actually less expensive than flying someone, giving them a hotel room, paying for all of their meals and things. So you actually become the same cost or less than sending some of their own execs. So, this makes a lot of sense for them.
It does. And living in Chicago, where I call home, there's quite a bit of work here in general, conventions and various events. So it's if you're local to a city that has a lot going on, then consider yourself fortunate. So.
Yeah, if you're willing to drive or fly, if you've got someone in the airline industry or you're in the airline industry, you can always fly non-rev. And now you can get to a location where maybe you can share a room or stay with a friend. You can really, really do a lot and expand your territory quite a bit there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you really take it, what you want to spend going into it, what you're making, and if it makes sense, then by all means, that's the way to do it.
Now, are you doing anything for your career-wise right now while we kind of are in this holding pattern of mid-COVID?
What a crazy time. I was working an event. My primary job is I work in the auto show industry, as well as interviewing motorsports drivers for an auto manufacturer. And up until that point in March, I was even at a 10-day show in Minneapolis, and we were sent home midway through that show. And honestly, Scott, I still, once April, May came around, I still thought things would pick up again. And here we are, September. So it's been one of those things. I have a lot of time to reflect, makes me realize how much I love what I do. Knowing I'm thrilled tomorrow we start training for our season next year. When that will be, we don't know 100%, but things are starting to fall into place, which is really exciting. So I love what I do. This has been, just a crazy time, and I hope that we learn some stuff from it and hopefully come out better on the other side.
Well, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that a lot of folks are mentioning that this is a really great time to update your portfolio, your photographs, your demo reel, your resume. Make sure that those are up to date, because we really have no idea when this is going to switch over to people hiring, and the people that look the most current and fresh are the ones that are going to get the jobs first. So.
Great advice. Yeah, and there honestly aren't a lot of distractions right now. I think that's the biggest thing with that is that, if we're in March and there's, 5-6 shows that month, it's, so this is a time where you can really focus, have that time to reflect and what you want to do going forward. So you gotta see the good in all this.
Now, working in the auto show business, there's a couple of agencies out there that I'm familiar with, like Gail Rice and trying to think of the other ones. There's a couple others. But
sure, yeah.
Those tend to be like a long-term travel gig, don't they?
It is, yeah. It's a big commitment. I would say that 2/3 of what I do deal with that, and then the other portion I do, the conventions freelance. So it's nice. You get a very diverse, different things. I could be at a medical convention one day and fly to a NASCAR race, right after that. So I do like the diversity and the change of scenery. It's never boring, I always say.
So when you're doing the auto shows, they're all in every major city and
in between.
And in between. But you usually get hired by a brand, like you're going to be the Ford person.
Correct.
And you've got to know the Ford story and the Ford features and benefits of that vehicle. And I've actually seen a lot of people actually standing on a round table, a turntable, as the car rotates around and on microphone explaining what this car does. Is that what you do?
That's what I do, and for the past 8 years, that's been my primary position. And it's one of those things, it sounds foreign. It's crazy to see someone in heels and a nice dress talking about like engine displacement, horsepower, towing capacity. But for us, we live and breathe it. It becomes second nature. And I think honestly, it's easy to retain once you have the similar conversations. If I'm in Texas, I'm talking about big trucks. If I'm in San Francisco, I'm talking about hybrid technology. So you just, you kind of just have a second nature. The biggest thing is going to be going forward. We've had this big gap. So there's been a few new vehicles that have come out virtually. So there's going to be some product that we're going to need to get up to speed on here when going forward. So that's going to be the big focus.
Now, when you're working an auto show, again, you're working a 10-day gig. Does that mean that the cost per day goes down a little bit because the volume is higher?
It doesn't. No, we're our contract, is if you work X amount of days, that's your rate. So you could literally, Detroit's about 16 days, which is crazy. So you're there. I always say I need to pay my hotel rent because I'm here more than I'm at home. But nope, that if you're working a 2-day show or a 15-day show, it's the same rate.
So talk to me. What is a typical day in an auto show look like for you?
So it depends on the size. I'll say that, if we're in a smaller, say we're in St. Louis, a smaller, demographic, or versus New York, Detroit. So some of the shows we have special uniforms. If we're doing a product reveal, we'll be there for press. So there's a lot of importance to make sure that we're looking, our best and ready to go, photo ready. Also, we're media trained. So if the news comes up to us, a newspaper, we need to be ready to go to talk about whatever's going on right behind us and ready to go. That you don't get, a 30-second warning. They're there, they're ready, they're on to the next. So I would say as far as the product too, the larger shows, really being able to have a good message about what's going on with whatever vehicle is equally as important. So we do a little bit of everything.
So, do you work 8 hours or 10 hours or 4 hours? What's a day look like there?
We work 6 hours. We are in heels, so luckily they take mercy on that and don't make us work, extremely long hours. They want us to be fresh and be on top of things when we're there. So, which is great because, if you're in New York for 2 weeks, you basically have a half a day to go explore. So, there's some really good things to come of that. I recently, maybe 2 years ago, worked the Honolulu show, and that's always good to, get out after.
Sign me up right now. That's what I want to do.
So, you do, but the big thing is it's very important to just to be fresh and ready to go when you're on the floor. So. Right.
That's
the same with conventions. I don't see that, it could be larger audiences, longer days, but it's still the same deal. You got to be fresh and ready to go. So.
Right. So do you prefer working auto shows or do you prefer working trade shows?
To be honest with you, I love the diversity of it all. The auto show is what I consider, my true job, and then the freelancing is the other stuff that fortunately falls into place. But I love just knowing that I'm working in one city doing one. It's just a great feeling to never, you're always getting out, trying new things in new cities, new experiences. So the whole thing I'm grateful for.
So what kind of person are they looking for? The auto shows totally fascinate me because it's actually really good work. In the sense there's a show that I should be at right now this week. If it wasn't for COVID, I should be in Amsterdam right now at the IBC trade show.
That's painful, Scott.
Yeah, it's a 5-day show. And for me, I totally want a 5-day show because I have to do so much prep and get there and everything else. A 2-day show or a 5-day show, give me a 5-day show any day.
For sure, yeah. I know the supplies you bring. It's not easy.
Yeah. Well, as a magician, I have to carry a lot of extra stuff too.
You do.
But now at the auto shows, do they put you up in your own private room, or do you have to share a room?
Yeah, we we can send in travel requests. It doesn't mean it's necessarily you're going to get that, but they are great and try to accommodate us. And that's, they try to, we send reviews into if like a hotel was too far away or it didn't have, so they really cater it to make our experience as great as possible. So yeah, it's a great thing, and it works out.
So what's your favorite trade show hall to work in?
Oh my gosh, let me think. There's so many. I do love San Francisco. I grew up there, so it's nice to get back. And every time I'm there, the show's usually like a very intense, crazy show, usually a tech show, but it's the energy of that I enjoy. And
that's at Moscone?
Yeah, at Moscone. And have you been since they've redone it? It's super nice now.
It's interesting because Moscone has kind of quieted down as a location for a lot of shows.
I think it's expensive, and then some stuff going on in the city wasn't as desirable for folks traveling.
Right. So I'm seeing, just before we hit this slowdown, this stop down. That's not even a slowdown. Before we hit this, I was in Las Vegas like every other week.
Yes.
And Orlando about every 3 weeks. So
I'm right there with you.
It's like those two places. But the interesting thing is that because I travel there so much, I have my stomping grounds. I really feel like it's almost a second home now.
Right. Yeah.
So
I recently worked. Have you worked the Philadelphia, the convention center there?
Right there by the Reading Terminal. Really nice, isn't it?
I forgot about that one. That just brought you. Yeah, our conversation just brought that. That's a good one.
Yeah, the Reading Terminal is great because at lunch you can go downstairs and right across the Reading Terminal, and there's cheesesteaks and my goodness.
Great. Yeah, that's a good one. So that actually might be the winner now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
So
all right.
That terminal had a little bit of everything. So
I kind of like places that I don't get to all that frequently. And the other place I've been working a lot lately was Indianapolis.
Oh, get out. Yeah, that convention center is huge too. That's
a very nice convention center and lots of hotels within walking distance. And
such a great. I work the auto show there every year right after Christmas, and it's perfect because everything is so close. I mean,
right after Christmas, you got to bundle up then.
Yeah, it's cold, but there's plenty to do, and you don't need an Uber most of the time. You can just head on over to it.
All right, so here's my secret tip for Indianapolis. You must go get a shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's.
Actually, my husband upstairs, we have had the last 5 New Year's Eve dinners there, and that is definitely something we've had every single time. Still takes my breath away because it's so intense with the
horseradish.
It's good.
Yeah, it's so strong. So if you get there, that's kind of the must-have when you're there.
It totally is. Yeah, little secrets like that in every city. Those are good too.
True. So, what's been your favorite product? You said that you'd work the cars, but outside the auto shows, is there a product that you've really enjoyed working for?
Oh, that's a great question. The tech stuff's interesting because it's ever evolving and it's at such a rapid pace. I mean, if you don't work a show for 3-4 months and go back, there's something crazy that's out. So whether like CES or, even some of these Black Hat, which is actually like a hacking type show, you're just fascinated by the presence of the attendees and, the technology. It's super cool. So,
well, remember, if you ever get a booking for Black Hat, you need to turn your cell phone off.
I thought they were joking the first year, and they're like, "No, you really need to do that."
So if you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube, and you're wondering what the heck is Black Hat, Black Hat is literally a hacking convention.
Literally, yeah.
And there are devices and people around you simply for fun, looking for phones to hack into, and you will have messages pop up in your phone, and whatever data you have sucked out of there.
Crazy.
So be really careful at that show.
I learned too, a lot of them, like if they hack and can show what they did there, that's a good opportunity for them to get a job. So like on top of that, that's something that they're looking at too. So the hacking world is lucrative. So
there is a trade show for everything.
Everything.
You name the product, the business, there is a trade show for it, and there's trade shows going on in every city every week.
That is so true.
So if you live close to, let's say, Los Angeles, and there's not a trade show going on in the Los Angeles Convention Center, trust me, there's one going on in Long Beach, there's one going on in Anaheim, and there's one going on in San Diego. You're all within driving distance.
That is very true. They are everywhere, even smaller hotels, smaller footprints. I'm sure you've worked those as well. So even within the city, maybe one at a location you haven't been before. That's happened to me a few times right here in Chicago, actually.
Yeah, and if you're in Chicago, if there's not one going on at McCormick Place in the 3 convention centers of McCormick Place, there's Rosemont out by the airport, and there's Navy Pier, and there's the Hyatt, as you say, for the smaller things too.
Yeah, you nailed it right there. Yep.
So if you could look back 10 years from ago, and you could give yourself a piece of advice that you have, like from the knowledge you have today, what would you tell yourself? And this is really for those that want to get into this career.
Absolutely. I've actually thought about this recently, just kind of having that time to reflect. I would say if you are being pushed to, provide a new skill set, like, for example, for me, presenting the first couple times was terrifying. But once you do it, and you learn it and you're better and you go on. So I would say to myself, push yourself, because those times where you're maybe not the most comfortable is when you have periods of growth. And with this industry, if you can get to that point, you'll see, a lot more dollar signs with that skill set. So it becomes a lucrative skill if you, so don't be afraid, take the time to learn, work hard, and, good things will come from it.
Do you use an ear prompter?
I do.
Yeah. So I think we're going to do, I promise, at some point in time, we're going to do an entire episode just on ear prompter, what it is, how to use it, and some tips. But I think that when you're thinking about expanding, making yourself uncomfortable, this is one of those things that's great to learn, is that ear prompter skill. Right.
And I'm sure you're familiar with Madison, Las Vegas. I've worked with him quite a bit right up until, he's like the master of not only the ear prompter, but ad-libbing in it. Like, he is like the guru. Like, there are so many great presenters out there, but that's just the first one that comes to mind. Like, just he has this master and he can put his own spin on it. So that's when you really become a talent that people want. So he comes to mind. There's, again, many more. But yeah, if you can build on stuff like that, you'll have a busy calendar. So
you're talking about Madison Alexander?
Yep.
Well, shout out to Madison.
Yeah. So if he's watching this, he's amazing. He could walk away, come back, and just go. And it doesn't matter. It's natural. It flows. People identify with what he's talking about. It's, not mechanical. So
what's interesting? If you're listening to this podcast, and go back and listen to from the very beginning, because these are timeless, but you're going to notice a couple of themes here. Number one, many people have made this their career. So it's a great place to start a career. Second, absolutely, it's a close, tight-knit community. We know each other. We know who's good. We bump into the same people all the time. So, be aware of that as you build your reputation through this industry, is that, you are going to be known by your reputation at the beginning. I can't
agree with you more on that. And, if you're partnered up with someone, you're going to know they're a hard worker. We're going to get this, say we're crowd gathering, we're going to get this done. And then, when you see those names and those connections, it is, again, a small world, and you know who the strong ones are out there for sure.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really feel like I know a lot more about the auto part of this world.
And maybe it's something, they kind of carry over. So maybe someone's watching and is interested in that. That's always an option too, because you're kind of able to level the field there and do both. So.
All right. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time today. We look forward to hearing from you again sometime soon.
Great talking to you, Scott. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, once again, we want to thank Amy Cosgrove for sharing us a little look into the world of auto shows and making a living as a brand ambassador trade show staffer. Well, it is that time of the show where we do a face palm. Now, the purpose of this face palm is, when you just see something that makes you put your hand on your forehead going, I can't believe I actually saw that, or I did that, or someone else did that. This is meant to make you smile, and these are the stories that we tell each other out on the activations, just to kind of entertain each other. Well, today's facepalm is from Laura Harwood. She was on last week's show, if you didn't hear her interview, and she wants to share with us what we call a hair-raising facepalm, and her last-minute decision to cut out of her contract.
So my facepalm moment was when I had just graduated college. I still didn't know for sure what I was going to be doing. I was kind of just thinking at that moment about trying to get some money consistently coming in. I had went to a hair show audition for a trade show in Chicago, and I was hired to have my hair cut to my chin, chopped off. And at the time, my hair was actually even longer than it is right now. So they offered me $1,000 for one day. And in my head, I was like, wow, I think I was 18. And I was like, this is great money. It's one day. I don't even think it was the full 8 hours that they were going to need me for. And so immediately I said yes to it, not really thinking of the reality of the situation. So then I went home and it started sitting in, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, what did I just sign up for? What did I just agree to? I'm going to cut my hair, and this could take me like 3 to 4 years maybe to grow back. Like, what if I hate it? What am I going to do? And so I kind of started having a little freak out moment. But then I kept convincing myself, no, this is okay. You can do this. So it got to the day before my prep day. So there was supposed to be like one prep and then the day of the haircut. So I got to the prep day, and I just got cold feet, started panicking. I was like, what am I doing? This is like the worst decision I could have ever made. And so I had to take the awkward moment and call the company and just tell them, like, listen, I know this is great money and I really, really, really appreciate this offer, but after thinking and sitting on this, there's just absolutely no way that I can show up and get my hair cut to my chin. And I didn't want to be that person that just was a no-show. So I wanted to give them, some time to find someone else. But it was definitely my embarrassing facepalm moment, because I had to back out of it. And I was really upset with myself for even agreeing to it. So I would just say, moral of the story, always realize what you're signing up for before you actually sign a contract, because there are going to be certain times where you might get asked to do something that you don't necessarily want to do, but the money looks really good. So you just say yes right away, and then it starts sitting with you and you realize, oh my goodness, this is a horrible mistake.
Well, we want to thank Laura Harwood for sharing with us what would have been an embarrassing start to any brand ambassador trade show staffing career. Thank goodness that's well behind her. But nonetheless, this world of trade show staffing, event staffing, brand ambassadoring, it's got all sorts of great stories. And I can't wait till next week for you to hear another story, another question, another tip to help you make a career out of brand ambassadoring trade show staffing. Well, hey, Face the Event is available on Apple, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on Alexa. Wherever you hear your podcasts, that's where you're going to find us. And how you can help me out. I'm not asking for money for all this information. Here's how you can help me out and keep this podcast going. Subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Why is that important? Because it helps more people find us, and it gives us the feeling that actually what we're giving you is worth something. So all you have to do is take a moment of your time to subscribe, rate, and review Face the Event on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. Well, that wraps up this week's show. I can't wait to see you out on an activation soon. Until then, I can't wait to face the event.